What's up, everyone? How's it going? I hope you're all doing great, and if you're hearing my voice, they let us make it to Friday again. Now, last week, as you know, I didn't make it to Friday because I had to take a couple of days off, but I'm back. So, they could only hold me down for a few days before I came back, and here I am. It's Friday again. I'm here, you're here, so I hope that you're ready for another episode of the Leaf podcast. Of course, if you're curious, I'll talk a little bit about why I took a couple of days off last week, everything that happened during the whole thing with my tooth and all that. I'll do that at the end because I know that a lot of you guys aren't here to hear me go on about my dental issues. You want to hear some crazy encounters, and that's what I got for you today. Now, in true fashion of everything I just went through, I did look for some crazy medical encounters, like stuff like that. I didn't find a whole lot that was supernatural, just a lot of horror stories that I was like, wow, I'm glad that didn't happen to me. But what I did find is a very interesting encounter from an abandoned hospital. Now, to specify, it is an abandoned psychiatric hospital, and it goes like this. I happen to live near an abandoned psychiatric hospital. I usually just refer to it as psych, and my friends know what I mean. And I've had some super strange experiences there. This is one of my later experiences from when I was in high school, and I went there with friends. After we get off the bus, we immediately head to the psych place, so we can smoke weed and cigarettes and just don't have to deal with our parents. So me and 4 other friends are the ones that went there. There was myself, RJ, Tom, Lucas, and Devin. Devin with an I. He specifies that. So we head into the building, just like we did 1,000 times before. Everything seems normal, and we start heading for the roof. RJ and I are having a conversation separate from the group, but we're still following, kinda a little bit behind. I need to tie my boots, so RJ and I hang back to continue talking. I finish tying up, and then realize that the group is nowhere to be seen or heard. It's only been about 5 or 10 seconds. After hastily trying to catch up to a group in the only direction that they could have went, we call out to them. Somehow, they are now on the opposite side of the building and 3 or 4 floors above us. We catch up with the group eventually and think nothing of it, even though this building is huge. We get to the roof and spark a joint, but no one really wants to smoke. Everyone's kind of jumpy for some reason. The whole time, I keep thinking I'm hearing footsteps. Nobody else hears them, but by me mentioning it, I'm starting to make everyone else a little nervous. So 1 or 2 guys share the joint between themselves, and we decide to just exit the building because we're all sort of jumpy. I get to the exit, and Lucas is the last one out. As he's coming out, Lucas yells, "Oh, what the hell?" and presents a scratch that goes from one end of his forearm to the other. Now, Lucas is kinda clumsy, so we thought that he scratched it himself just as he jumped out of the exit. The exit is a window about 7 to 8 feet up, but there's a bunch of debris piled up in front of it just so we can get in and out a lot easier. We begin talking again and just kind of forget about everything that just happened. After all, we're home free. We're outside the building now. Nothing can hurt us, right? All of a sudden, we hear a sound. I can only describe it as the sound of an EMP from a sci-fi game or Call of Duty, but it rings out all around us, and at the same time, we see a visible orange wave basically scan over the entire landscape around us. All of us begin to run for our lives, but naturally we fall into a single file line. Devin, who is directly in front of me, goes, "Oh shit," and while he's looking at something to his right, he falls over. I stop and I look where Devin is looking, and I have the exact same reaction. Oh shit. There's a figure, probably somewhere around 5'9", but the thing is, you can't see anything about it. It's a pitch black figure, and around it seems to be some kind of aura of radio static. It feels absolutely horrible to look at. I still get crazy chills even just when I remember it. I help Devin up, and we catch up with the group again down the trail. We get into the woods. None of us are talking. We just want to go home. But now the woods are eerily quiet, except for this one sound. It almost sounds like a bird that's singing a strange tune. But the thing is, it's all off. It's out of tune. The notes aren't right. Just hearing it is grating to your ears. And we hear this all the way to the exit of the woods. This is the most blatantly supernatural experience I've ever had. And it was in the building where we felt safe. We even called it our safe house. I've had plenty more, but this was the biggest one that was worth telling. So of course, with all of these, I always ask, what do you think happened here? This one has a lot of hallmarks of a lot of high strangeness stories. The weird off-tune kind of song in the woods, seeing a person that seems to kind of resemble a shadow person, but kind of a glimmer man. Now, of course, in an area, especially one of an abandoned psychiatric hospital, you can just imagine how many tortured spirits or tortured souls went there and died there, and they're still kind of behind. Do you think that this was a manifestation of all of that emotion, all of that energy? Or do you think it was an entity of some other kind? As always, I would like to hear what you think it is down in the comments. But the reason why I ask if you think it was a manifestation or something is because of the distortion. Now I ask this because in an experience of mine, I've told it before on the channel, so I don't have to tell it again. The long and short is I was working a night shift, and someone came around the aisle, because I was working at a store then. Someone came around the aisle, and they were all distorted. And this was right around midnight, because, I was working that kind of shift. Now, usually around that time, of course, there's nobody in the store. It's just me. But since I've had that kind of experience, I've often wondered if so many people are coming and going, or coming and, in this case, staying, then is it a manifestation of that? I don't know. There seems to be a lot of things that we just don't understand about the world, or maybe we're not supposed to. It's really hard to say. I like to think that we should be able to understand it and why it happens, and if we can help, but I don't know. Sometimes you just never find out, I guess. And as far as I know, no one's ever passed away in this store. No one's ever really gotten hurt in this store. So this is why I wonder if it's just the energy that's left behind. I don't know. Anyways, this next one, I think it's from Rez in Texas. And he says that this happens like decades ago. So this guy says that he was out his back door one night. He was just lighting the charcoal grill. He says there was no backyard to speak of. It's pretty much just a steep hill that's covered in trees. It's pitch black up there and you can't see really anything. Then he says, I hear something moving. This is not unusual. There's lots of deer around. But whatever it is, it's breaking branches, and it sounds like that they are 2 inches in diameter. This is obviously alarming to me because I am imagining something of fairly large mass. This is in central Texas, so there are no bears or anything like that. So after a few seconds of listening to this and being frozen in WTF mode, I then hear what sounds like huge wings flapping. Again, I can't see anything, but I'm estimating that whatever it's flapping its wings, it seems to have a 15-foot wingspan or more. At that point, I kind of noped out and ran back inside. I deadbolted the door and got out my shotgun just to calm myself down. I know it's mostly speculation because I didn't see whatever it was, but I know what I heard, and I know what I felt. Coincidentally, about a week later, I happened to be listening to Coast AM, and there was a guest talking about reports of giant birds or Thunderbirds in Texas. So the reason why that I like stories like that, and I like hearing about them, and I'll put them in a video every now and then, is because these are the type of stories that you hear around a small community, at least in my experience. Maybe it's different a lot of other places, but I live in a small community. So these are the type of stories that people have that they don't really talk about. You'll say, like, oh, do you believe in blah, blah, blah? And they're like, oh, I don't believe in all that foolishness, usually in that same voice. And then when you say something that happened to you, they turn around with, well, there was this one time. And it starts with a story like that. And then as you get into the stories that they have, you find out that they've seen some really weird things out there. Which brings me to a next encounter. But this encounter isn't from really anywhere. It was one that was told to me, like, quite a few years ago now. And I've heard it repeated over the years by the same person. And it's never been changed as far as I can tell. So one night when I was talking to this person, again, this was a few years ago, so I was probably a teenager and just really getting interested in this kind of stuff. I was talking about some weird stuff that I've seen out in the woods because I used to like to go for walks and hike a lot. And especially when you're going down side trails, or trails that you don't really know where they're going, but you know the general area, you can really see some weird stuff. So I decided to test the waters a bit. I said that I've seen some weird stuff in the woods, and I asked him if he had. And he said, oh yeah, but nothing that can't be explained. And I said, well, there was one time that I was walking out in the woods, and I came across an altar. Now, finding a pagan altar or whatever kind of altar out in the woods is not that big of a deal, especially if you live way out here. But the thing about this altar was that the grass around it, and even the leaves on the tree that was overhanging it, were all dead. The rest of the tree was alive. The grass otherwise around the area was fine. But this part was completely dead, completely devoid. It was brown and decaying and everything else. And just even being in the general presence of it gave you a really weird feeling. So after I told him the full story, there's just a lot of other details about trees and kinds of trees I saw and stuff like that. That's not much of an interest to a lot of you, I would assume. But then he hit me with there was this one time. I think he said that this happened back in the mid-70s, where he was out fishing with a friend. Now, this area of the river they were at, they didn't need to go in a boat because it was plenty deep just from the sides of the shore. He decided that he would stay and fish from the trail, or like maybe a few feet off, because again, the river runs right by it. His friend, however, decided that he wanted to kind of go in the water, so he walked back down the trail, about a couple 100 feet or so, and kind of went down in, with his equipment on and stuff, and that was it. They were just fishing. And then, as they're fishing, something weird begins to happen. He said he felt like that he spaced out. And usually, people space out when they fish all the time. You kind of go into like a trance. But this was a little different. He said he felt like it was vertigo, almost. And he's never had vertigo before or after all this happened. And basically, what brought him out of it was that he felt like suddenly he was being watched from behind. Now, on the other side of this trail, so as you're walking down this trail, probably the left side would be all river, and the right side would be a lot of very thick bushes that quickly lead into a thick forest. And it was around this time that before he turned around to look, he looked at his watch. He realized that he had just lost 2 hours. Now again, when you're fishing, going into like a bit of a trance is completely normal. It's how a lot of people calm down. But he always said that this was not normal for him. Usually, he would kind of come to whenever there was a fish tugging on the line. And in this case, There was a fish tugging on the line, but it seemed to have been doing it for quite a while, and his line was also being dragged across the trail as if he had dropped it or it was taken out of his hand. So he kind of had that, like Windows 95, 98 kind of loading thing going on where like the hourglass is turning up on that side again. And he clued into what was going on, so he ran over and grabbed the line before it went down over the side hill. And he reeled in basically just nothing. It was like seaweed, or the fish had just took the bait and left. But the feeling of being watched stayed. And he turned around at this point because now he's frustrated because he lost his fish or whatever was on the line. So he turns around and he sees something peeking out from behind a tree. He said that in this case, he really only saw its hand on the side of the tree, and it had really long black fingers, and it had eyes. He said they were the size of dinner plates, but also I don't know how big his dinner plates are, so I wouldn't be able to tell you how big that may be, but I would assume it just means big eyes. And they were unblinking, and they seemed to be all white, and they were staring at him from the darkness of the trees. Now, of course, being curious, he walked toward it to see what it was, and he said that pretty much with every step that he took toward it, it seemed to take a step back. And then he would take a step back, and it seemed to either pause or come forward just a little bit, but it never left the cover of the trees. And he said that somehow it was always peeking out from behind a tree. It was never, like, in full view. He never actually saw it kind of move backwards. It just looked like it would appear behind a different tree, and then it would appear behind a tree closer to him again. That kind of thing. So eventually, this really weirds him out, and he backs out onto the trail again, and the thing comes right to the edge of the forest. And all he can still see is the big long hand that it has, and the eyes. He said that the eyes were, he said indescribable, but he said that they were all white, but they did something to you. He couldn't really describe it. Eventually, he decides that maybe he should just leave that part of the woods. So as he's backing out of the woods and about to pick up his line, the thing is still staring at him. And then he notices that his line is still caught on something, so he glances down kind of at the corner of his eye to see what it's caught on, and quickly looks back, and it's gone. And he didn't see it again after this, but you can imagine that all the hair on the back of his neck is standing up, so he quickly untangles his line and goes to find his friend. And now this is where another little bit of high strangeness comes in. His friend is also a little off, confused. He said he doesn't know what happened. He was just fishing in the river, and all of a sudden, he just loses 2 hours, just like he did, and he woke up on the side of the river with his tackle box all out and things had been rummaged through. Safe to say, they both called it a day right there. The issue was that they had to walk miles, or in my case kilometers, to get back out of this trail because they had parked their truck way down at the trailhead. And this is the part that, as a kid, scared the hell out of me, if it didn't scare the hell out of me already, because again, I used to hike and walk in the woods all the time. He said that as they were walking out, it was coming on dark because, again, they were all disoriented. They didn't know what time it was anymore. They didn't have a watch on them. They just knew that about 2 hours had passed because of the change of the sun in the sky. So he says that him and his friend weren't really talking too much. They just wanted to get back to the truck. That was the move. That was the focus. Now, as it's coming on dark, that thing comes back again. And this time, it's not alone. Following it seems to be some kind of laughter. Now the laughter seemed to change positions as to where it was. Sometimes it would be far off, sometimes it would be right up next to them, and sometimes it would be way down in front of them, nearer to their truck. So obviously they really picked up the pace, but they didn't run because they figured that if they ran, then something bad was going to happen. So the whole time, they're just terrified, unable to speak. Eventually, I think an hour or so later, when it was pitch black outside and they had no flashlights, because again, they didn't even intend on being out there that long, but they got back to their truck. And when they loaded all their stuff into the box, they get in the truck and turn it on. They notice that when they turn on the beams, that something seems to scuttle off in the dark, and it looks back at them with those same white eyes. Now, when he told me that story, at first I was wondering if it was true because he has joked before, but he was dead serious when he was telling me this. And not only that, he told me again, like a couple years later, and nothing about the story changed. Everything was still the same, and he seemed still like pretty kind of shaken up by it. Now, at that time, I would have no idea, no sweet clue what it was he could have seen. But as I've read stories and as I've been doing this channel, the only thing I can think of is maybe like a hide behind or something like that. But the laughter, it's really hard to say. And I say a hide behind because my province is in the Appalachian Mountains, or as we call it here, the Appalachian Mountains. And that really is all I can think of about it. I have no idea what it could be, so if you made it this far in the video, let me know what you think that it could have possibly been. Like the big white eyes, he can only see like a hand or like a long clawed hand kind of thing, and then it kind of scuttles off into the dark. The laughter, no idea what that could be. And again, if you've made it this far and you wanted to hear about what happened and why I had to take 2 days off. So I think for the past 3 weeks now, well, not now, but like for 3 weeks, I had like extreme pain in my jaw and in my mouth. Now, I had a cavity that I was going to get looked at, and you know, things happen, you kind of get distracted from it, other things come up. So I was still going to get it looked at. And a few days before the appointment, it started hurting really bad. Now, by then, I was worried that it could be an abscess or something like that, but it wasn't an abscess. So the cavity had just gone down enough that it started hurting really bad. That's about it. Now, the thing is, if you were to look at the tooth, it didn't really look that bad. It looked like there was like a little cavity in it. And other than that, there was nothing else wrong with the tooth. So it was really sudden, really weird, and I had to go to the dentist and get it looked at and stuff. They said they couldn't do it there because there was like a curved root on it or something, and they didn't want to chance it because it was close to the nerve. And I'm like, I can tell it's close to the nerve. That's why it's hurting so effing bad. So I think I had to take like 12-hour Advil and Tylenol together in order for it to stop. And then they told me that it was kind of burning itself out and that the pain would stop in time for me to go get it like taken care of at the specialist. At the specialist, he looked at it at first and he thought that it was just a deep cavity, or like one of those ones that doesn't look that bad on the surface, but inside it just kind of it's just a deep cavity and it can still be filled. But while he was taking it out, he decided to, like when I had the freezing in, he decided to kind of take the drill and kind of drill around to see how deep the cavity was. And it turns out that it was just a normal cavity, but at the bottom there was like a little slit or like a little mark, and that mark is where it got infected. And let me tell you, I didn't know it was infected, but I knew after that because when they had to take it out, I felt it, and that was a 0 out of 10 feeling. And not only that, it came out in pieces because we didn't know how bad it was, because again, it didn't hurt until like days before that. So he had to stick the drill down into the socket to try and get that little bit out, and yeah, I felt that too. hot, searing pain all the way down into my jaw, and that was, again, a 0 out of 10 feeling. So, I guess the moral of the story is get your cavities checked because you don't know what they could actually be. And from this, I had the appointment anyways, and that just kind of exploded from there. It was pretty wild, and it was not a very good time. So that's what happened, and the reason why I had to take a couple days off because of it is because I had a lot of swelling in my jaw, obviously, because there was like a lot of trauma going on there, and I hadn't really slept properly in the entire time that I've been having that pain, and that was the first time I was able to actually sleep and actually eat a proper meal. So I just felt awful. I had no energy. I just needed like a day or two to recover a bit. But again, they could only stop me for 1 week because I'm here again. And I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Leaf podcast. It was a bit more rambly than the other ones. Some more personal stories were in it, but I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, then please consider liking and subscribing. And if you have the feature, I think you can swipe on the comment section and it'll bring you to a hype page. And if you want to hype the video, then that would be fantastic. Thank you so much. If you would like to support the channel just a little bit further, there's memberships, there's super thanks, and in the description, there's a PayPal and a Patreon, even if you would like to do a one-time donation through those. Yeah, I think that's about it. Of course, we are getting near spooky season, and I'll try to have something going on for Halloween or around then. That'd be really cool. And yeah, I hope you subscribe or stay subscribed, and I hope you join me for Sunday's video. And then after that, you can join me for Wednesday's video again, and then another podcast, and the cycle just kind of repeats. So if you want to join me here, join us here, that would be great. But until the next video, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.